done this properly before, apart from 3 weeks ago, but it was actually Easter Monday, so nobody wanted to do anything, and Michelle was camping, which I believe was against the rules. Michelle, is that true?
In the backyard though, just in the backyard.
Yeah, right. A very big backyard, a big backyard known as.
She has got a big backyard.
She has. That's true. That's true. So we're planning to have Fiona Wright here, and I don't know. Some of you would know Fiona Wright. Suzanne, you'd know Fiona, wouldn't you?
A little bit. She knows me.
What about you, Michelle? Do you know Fiona?
No, I don't know her.
No, I don't know.
I know her work. I've never met her.
Right. Yeah. So we're sort of in the middle.
I really liked her, the masterclass audio though. They're really great.
Oh, thank you.
Jane.
Yeah.
Yeah, really terrific.
Well, Kathy here did one. Have you had a listen to yours, Kathy?
No, I hate listening to me.
Yeah. No, they're
My
funny.
voice sounds so weird. Anyway.
they're odd because they're I sort of go to people and say we're going to talk about whatever, but we end up sort of going off on a bit of a tangent. But that's okay. Yeah. It goes where it goes. It ends up being a bit organic, I guess.
About half of them.
Which other ones have you listened to?
The guy. I'm in the garden, so I'm not looking at the name. The guy who you talked about was it? I can't remember. It's just my brain is completely emptied by Zoom meetings all day. Well, I can't remember what title you gave it. I'll have to go back and look at the podcast.
What was he talking about?
He was talking about, he's got some possum story that I missed.
Oh, John Larkin. Yeah.
Oh, that would have been good.
Yeah.
The John Larkin possum story, which I'll share with you now. He won't mind if I share it. He used to tell the story all the time at school things, but it basically talk about what's unseen is often more powerful than what's seen. And he lived in, this is his previous house, he lived in Beecroft in Carlingford. And there was this huge tree behind the house that was just behind his semi-detached study with a tin roof. And every night he'd hear, at the same time he'd be working, and he'd hear this huge possum, go thumpty-thumpty-thumpty-thump across the roof, and then launch into space into this moment of silence, and then he'd hear it land in the tree, this huge possum go in the tree. And then one day he went out there and got all kind of busy in the garden and got out his chainsaw and cut the tree down because it was dying. And so that night he's in his study and he's working away, and suddenly he hears dumpty 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 dump, and then just silence. And he's
oh, that's awful.
Possum launched into the smoke.
No.
And Action was about historical settings.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really
That
good.
was Kathy's. Yeah, it was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, very good.
Oh, thank you.
We talked about Deadwood and stuff.
3 ago that I listened to. So, pardon?
We talked about Deadwood and stuff, and the naughty words they use in
that's
Deadwood.
Right, I know, and I thought, oh my God, I've forgotten to watch Deadwood. I've got to put that on my list, my long list.
Kathy's become one of my
followers.
Well, no, I've become one of. We started talking about TV. We've been watching it. Turns out our tastes are almost identical. So
yeah, no. Still not sure about Carnival Row.
Not sure about Carnival Row.
Yeah. But honestly, can I just say, Deli Crime, fantastic.
Deli Crime, yep.
Cheer, fantastic. Like,
I saw Di reaching for a pen. You're going to write these down, are you, Di?
Yeah. Go on.
Good.
So, Deli
my
Crime.
cup of tea.
Deli Crime was one that we discovered on Netflix, and it's actually, remember that it was actually about a month or so ago they actually executed the last of these guys, but it was the guys that committed that gang rape on a bus in Delhi.
Oh,
in
right.
Delhi. And it's basically a drama based on the woman who led the investigation, the police officer. And of course there's all the institutionalized sexism and
it's like a really good English crime story, but it's set in Delhi. It's just so amazing.
So good. Because the thing is, when these guys did what they did, they ran for the boonies. They went home to mum and dad's place out in rural India, and so they knew they had a really limited window in which to nail these guys down, otherwise they'd never catch them. And so but of course there's corruption and all those things. It's actually fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, I just couldn't believe how good it was. Like, it was so good. So
And it's got that lovely thing that a lot of Indian movies have, where they'll be speaking in English, but then it'll drift into Hindi, and then there'll be Hindi with a couple of English words dropped in, and you just sort of have to pay attention.
They keep on jumping from Hindi to English. It's so amazing.
Yeah. Anyone else watching anything good?
I just watched Normal People.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet. I love the book. The book was great.
Look, I think if you love the book, you probably really like the film. Series. I read some really disparaging reviews of it by critics, but it's like very high ratings on IMDb. But I think that what really struck me, this very young romance, if you like, awkward, painful. And the boy, like, I just thought this is such a beautiful rendition of a young, inarticulate male in love and out of touch with his feelings. I just really liked it. Irish, contemporary.
It's amazing. It's like a series, right?
Yeah,
I have to say, the actual book, it wasn't like heavy on plot. I always wondered how they'd do that, but do you know what I mean?
Really hit the spot sort of affectively. The characters were really credible and really moving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like it.
Oh, I'll have to have a look.
You might hate it, though, I think, James.
Is Dana still around? She's disappeared.
Yeah, she just wants to listen.
She's probably doing something, useful.
Yes, she is.
Dana. Sorry, Dana, not Dana. I'm sorry, I keep saying it like an American name. Yeah.
I know.
Sorry, you are there. Sorry, you just...
The camera's down there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'd been pushed off the side. That's okay, as you were. Carry on. The other thing we watched recently that you might really enjoy, it's on Netflix as well. It's called Win the Wilderness. You'll enjoy this, Kathy, because it's sort of...
What's that about?
It's a reality show, but it's not your usual kind of reality show that's scripted for the drama and so forth. There's an old couple, the Oseys, who he was the very last person in Alaska to take advantage of the... they used to have a rule that if in certain areas you could literally stake a claim like they used to.
Stake a claim.
And he was the last one to do that. And he walked 57 miles through the middle of virgin Alaskan wilderness, fighting off the grizzly bears and the black bears and the wolves and the whole lot. And that was about 40 years ago. And he and his wife built this amazing log cabin in the middle of Alaska. It's like 100 miles by air from anywhere. And so, but they're getting old and they need to they don't have kids to leave it to. So they got 6 UK couples to come over and do a whole range of tests to see how they would survive in the wilderness. And one of those couples was going to be the last couple standing, and they were going to inherit the property.
Wow.
It's beautiful. Oh my God, it's really stunning to look at, and yeah, it's good. So
can you tell me the name of that again?
It's called Win the Wilderness.
Win the Wilderness.
But it's not like your usual. We told some people it's a reality show. I said, "Oh, I'm so over reality." Yeah, but this is a bit different. It's not,
Sounds good.
There's no immunity challenges or any of that nonsense. We shouldn't talk about immunity at the moment, should we? That's just
strange, like how every metaphor accidentally turns into a COVID one where you don't mean it to. Sort of taint everything.
Did anyone have anything they wanted to share with us tonight?
You had a book there with you, Michelle.
Well, first of all, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but my internet keeps flashing up.
That was timely. Yeah,
and I've accidentally started recording while I was trying to figure out what's going on. So I was actually trying to text my husband going, I've started recording it. How do I stop that? I don't know.
Well, I'm recording as well, as you can see. So you don't. You should just be able to click on the little recording button in the top left corner, and it should just stop.
Stop. Okay.
Or it should say you want to stop. Yeah.
Would I see your recording button as well? Because I can click on it and it does nothing.
Oh, okay. Maybe you're looking at mine. I don't know.
Maybe I'm looking at
that's the
yours.
one that's just saying that that's recorded. So everybody knows from a legal perspective, we can't, It was interesting. I was reading something the other day about how we're all, why we feel more tired at the moment, and apparently it's all these meetings by Zoom are making us more exhausted because you're constantly on when you're on. I don't know.
And when you're sitting up like you're at a work meeting, I think you're much more tense in your body and your shoulders and your neck, and you normally would be if you were just lounging around a meeting table.
It's true. It's not relaxing in the same way as being in the same room with people.
No. But I've worked out how to
good, I think.
How to airplay to the smart TV so that if it's a meeting they don't need to see you at, you know, hundreds of people at it, you can just lie on the sofa and no one can see you. So if you turn off the camera, you can do whatever you like. They hate that though. They're like, we can't see you, Sue. And then there's the whole thing about alternative backgrounds.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Our own backgrounds here, but you know, you can go to anywhere you like.
In Mike's Zoom one, he's got a little row of, although I was trying to access it and see if I could do it, but he had things like, oh, you're on one. There you go. But you could go in Minecraft and
right.
You know,
everywhere.
For fun.
Finland.
Yeah. Look at you. Are you just doing that? See, yours is changing constantly.
I've just changed two. And now I'll put one. This is Lawson. This is Sunday's Glen.
Oh, right.
Beautiful.
Oh, I took that to home.
I think the other reason it's tiring as well is that you normally if you get together with a group of people, you've got like the journey home to chill out and sort of transition from being with people and being by yourself, or if you are by yourself. So yes, instead it's like all in the house.
And you've got that dress, there's all that drama, like, oh, what are they going to see from the waist up? I'm going to have to...
Are we all in our PJs from the waist down? Oh, that's all right. Oh, no. That's funny.
Very good.
So Michelle, what were you going to show us? You got a book there, have you?
I was reading an old anthology today, and I came across a poet who I really like. She's an Australian poet, and I felt like I was stalking her for a little while. She wouldn't, answer me because I wanted her book. But so I do have one I can share with you because I really love this one particular line in this.
Oh dear.
I can share it with you though. This is by Pam Schindler. Does anybody know Pam Schindler?
No.
So I think she's relatively new. She had a book out in about 2010. I think it was called, no, I've forgotten. I'll have to come back to that. In any case, she writes really beautiful nature poems. So this is one of my favorites. I'll share this one with you. I went out in the slow bloom of rain, wet petals on my skin, sleeping.
Oh, damn it.
I lodged in the high branches. I went out into the white air, into the misty quiet, the river slipping fast, striped darkness and silver. I swam under a cataract of hectic lorikeet chatter, then out into the calm, the eddy, the slow warm bloom. In the riverbank trees, the slow warm bloom of rain. I love that.
That's beautiful.
Isn't it? I love the idea of the sleeping ibis with folded white packages.
What's her name again?
Her name is Pam Schindler, as in Schindler's List. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I read you another one? Because it's so
go.
beautiful. This is called Man Sleeping. And I find it kind of funny, actually. It curls beside me at night, flanks just touching. It is sunk deep in sleep. It is a man, or rather, it is an ocean sleeping along the sand. Under its reflective sky, the tribe of unseen trails, wrapped under the moon, their marvelous seasons of seeding and rebirth. I would draw your hips to me, their silvery catch, but you have gone deep, far under the swell and sparkle, with the slow breath of waves, and you would not know me there. Isn't she gorgeous? Oh, I think so anyway. So she's one of my favourites at the moment. And I kept trying to pester her for her book, but no luck. Oh well.
She's
So
a
I
poet.
was
She's never going to sell it anyway. Might as well give it to you.
a poet.
Oh my God.
Sorry, is this thing on?
You're
Sorry
awful,
about
man,
that.
James.
Oh, this is a little cruel, isn't it?
That's too funny and
That's
horrible.
nice. So she's American, did you say?
No, she's Australian. She's a Brisbane poet, and she's a librarian at one of the. I think she's a university librarian as well. And she goes off bushwalking and does all these fabulous things. But has written one book, and I'm sure she must be working on another one. But I just have to find her poetry in tiny little. She just does them beautifully. They're such beautiful images. It's kind of peaceful for this particular time, I find.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so the boss is about to arrive, so play nicely and say nice things about me.
I found a poem too, actually, if you're interested.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
To get it. So I was thinking about domestic, you know, where everything is so domestic now, my God. and unfortunately, I had a workplace injury at home. You know, stubbed my toe because I wasn't wearing proper shoes and really hurt my toe, and I haven't been able to go for a walk. So this one's Judith Beveridge.
Ah, yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Oh,
To my neighbour's hens, which is what I can hear from my house.
Oh, nice.
Clara and Claudia, I hope you always stare at nothing in particular, taking turns through the garden, savouring Angelica borage and thyme. I hope you always gussy up your tail feathers towards a proud rock Cornish oyster who has a rubicund comb, a deep burnished chest, and an oratorical voice. May you always scratch at the earth among the ordinary sounds of tree branches swaying, dogs barking, leaves blowing, and never have to live on a sloping wire floor with 6 other birds in a space the size of a filing cabinet drawer, your beaks cut off, all of you starved, bald, mad, never seeing daylight. May your male chicks never be snatched away from you and put through a high-speed grinder. Sorry, it's a bit gruesome, isn't it? Mixed with hormones and fed to you, making you grow faster than your bodies can cope with before you are trucked off to slaughter, the sky cracking inwards like an egg. May you always walk through yard light and the rain's grainy footage and sleep on butter-coloured straw where you watch tufts of your down drift through sunshafts. I'm going to skip all the nasty bits now.
Oh no, add them. I love the nasty bits.
All right. Knowing nothing about battery cables, the jets of water that scold away feathers, or the motorised blades that split throats.
Oh.
May you always be fed corn, oatmeal, spaghetti, chow mein and risotto leftovers. Crusts of toast and dark pumpernickel, green and yellow kitchen scraps into which genial, attentive humans have mixed the shells of your own good eggs.
Oh. Wow. I'll tell you
It's
a little
fantastic.
bit a little gruesome story of mine. In my deep dark history, I lived on a farm and had to look after the chooks, including their slaughter at the end of the day when we were having. And the first time I was asked to help, it was part of that. You know, you have to douse them, and they smell like dogs, like wet dogs. When you wet the chickens to pluck them, they smell like wet dogs. I didn't know that. Okay. How lovely. Enjoy your wine.
You tried an answering poem from the slaughter.
From the slaughterer. How awful. How terrible.
Did you say you have one?
Who? Me?
Yeah.
No, I did.
Oh.
I used to find that was my job, to dispatch the chooks.
Amazing.
That was one of my jobs.
Well, it seems like we're in a little bit of a in an animal kind of mood, which suits me because I like animal poems and things. And one of the ones, since you mentioned, sorry, just got to let someone else in. Please come in. Are they there? Are they there?
Don't let just anyone in.
Oh, no.
Jane.
So did you set up a waiting room, James?
I'm sorry?
Did you set up a waiting room?
Absolutely. Yeah. And somebody's taken all the good magazines.
I know you shouldn't touch any magazines in waiting rooms right now.
Yeah, since you mentioned Judith Beveridge, I was lucky enough to do a poetry subject with her when I did my course. And one of the poems that she gave us in our little poetry collection that we had to read and assess was this one. Barn Owl by Gwen Harwood. Daybreak, the household slept. I rose, blessed by the sun. A horny fiend, I crept out with my father's gun. Let him dream of a child, obedient angel mind, old naysayer, no sayer, robbed of power by sleep. I knew my prize who swooped home at this hour, with daylight riddled eyes to his place on a high beam in our old stables to dream, light's useless time away. I stood holding my breath in urine-scented hay, master of life and death, a wisp-haired judge whose law would punish beak and claw. My first shot struck, he swayed, ruined, beating his only wing as I watched, afraid by the fallen gun, a lonely child who believed death clean and final, not this obscene bundle of stuff that dropped and dribbled through the loose straw, tangling in bowels and hopped blindly closer. I saw those eyes that did not see mirror my cruelty, while the wretched thing that could not bear the light nor hide hobbled in its own blood. My father reached my side, gave me the fallen gun, end what you have begun. I fired, the blank eyes shone once into mine and slept. I leaned my head upon my father's arm and wept, owl blind in early sun for what I had begun.
I have a poem called Tawny Frogmouth. Would you like to hear that?
Yeah, sure. Does it get shot or does it survive the poem?
No, it doesn't really. There's actually a poem I wrote to go into an art exhibition, so it goes with a photograph, which I don't think you'd be able to see very well. But
well, if you got it, have you got it nearby?
Yeah.
Can you hold? I'll spotlight you, and then you can hold it up for us. Maybe.
Okay. It's not a very good quality. Hang on a second. I'll just fold the piece of paper. Sorry.
Right,
I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can see the tawnies in the middle.
It looks like an ultrasound.
Yeah.
I can. Oh my God! It's a girl.
It's No, it doesn't come across very well. It's sort of got tiny little details. It's two little tawny chicks through lots of foliage. Anyway, it's a post-fire story. That morning in November, both parents were up on the cradling limb. The silvery one, with loose feather still askew, was on the nest, the two chicks jostling underneath. One pushed head and shoulders out, a clump of pale feathery fluff, with a dark horizontal line of bill and narrowed eyes. The rufusy mottled mother sat nearby, feigning oblivion. One day I walked the track and could not find them. I scanned the usual branches, saw nothing but leaves. Up and down, back and forth, then deep through a labyrinth, the little ones sat low on a sloping trunk, stretching their wings and breathing their breaths under watchful eyes. And now, here on the track, this green home scorched and cindered, beautiful messiness raised. There's a quietness after the helicopters and the flames. A sprinkling of songs from spinebills, robins, tree creepers, more. We can't see the tawnies, but as we walk away, a deep ooming floats out from the twilight.
Oh, nice.
Very nice.
That's great, Fiona.
Was that submitted for something you said?
There was an exhibition at the National Parks office here in Blackheath near Govett Sleep. It was called Birdland 2. And it was an art exhibition, and I was difficult and asked if I could submit a couple of poems with photos and was allowed. So that was very good.
It's good to be difficult.
Yeah.
So they were your photo. It was your photo, was it?
Yes.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yes.
Because we recently had something that we were involved with at WestWords with Sydney Living Museum with images that were given to us, and people were invited to write responses to that. So, Michael, can you take your mute off and tell us when is that going to be up and official?
It is meant to be official this Thursday. It's meant to be launched this Thursday. Well, actually, that was when the official launch was meant to be. It was meant to go online on next Monday. I think it's the online exhibition is still going to go up this Thursday, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Would you get to it through our website?
You will be able to get through it on our website. It will be up on our newsletter on Friday, so you'll be able to find out.
Excellent.
Lovely.
Yeah, and I just want to say that was really lovely. I really enjoyed that. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Anyway, else?
I've got a poem.
Yeah, go for it.
From Les Murray. I went to Les Murray's memorial service in Sydney. Did anybody else do that?
No.
It was great. It was so good. It was just like, it was really powerful, and there was this amazing didgeridoo player that sort of started things off. He walked down the aisle. I think he was from the Sydney Symphony or something like this classic didgeridoo player, and yeah, it was really moving. Anyway, but I just thought I'd read this one because it's it's kind of fraught, but it's amazing. I reckon this poem. It's called Cotton Flannelette. I don't know if anybody knows it. Shake the bed, the blackened child whimpers. Oh, shake the bed through beak lips that never will come unwry. And wearily the iron-framed mattress with nodding crockery bulbs jinks on its way. Her brothers and sister take shifts with the terrible glued-together baby when their unsleeping absolute mother reels out to snatch an hour, back to stop the rocking and wring pale blue soap water over nude bladders and blood-webbed chars. Even their cranky, evasive father is awed to stand, watches rocking the bed, lids frogged shut. Oh, please shake the bed, her contour walls and braille tattoos from where in her nightdress she flared out of half-drowse to a marrow shriek, peddling full-tilt fire sleeves in midair, are grainier with repair than when the doctor crying, "Dear God, woman, no one can save that child, let her go," spared her the treatments of the day. Shake the bed, like count phone poles, rhyme, classify realities, bang the head, any iteration that will bring in the brain's forks the melting molecules of relief and bring them again. Oh, rock the bed, nibble water with bared teeth, make lymph like arrowroot gruel as your mother grips you for weeks in the untrained perfect language till the doctor relents, salves and wraps you in dressing that will be the fire again, ripping anguish off agony, and will confirm the ploughland ridges in your woman's skin for the 60 more years your family weaves you on devotion's loom, racking the bed as you yourself, 6 years old, instruct them. Isn't that an amazing? Oh, so powerful.
So what did you like? What do you like about Les Murray's poetry?
What I like?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, sometimes I like it and sometimes I don't, but that one particularly I just thought was amazing. It was so powerful.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big poetry person anyway. It's just occasionally it gets to me sometimes, and that was one of them.
Suzanne, did you listen to the, and it might not be up yet, is Harry Lang's poetry podcast isn't up yet, I think.
No.
So we've got Harry Lang doing one on poetry, which is going to be coming out this coming week. So
cool.
Keep an eye out for that.
Or an ear.
Sorry, or an ear for that matter.
Yeah.
Something else I was about to say, and it's completely left my mind. Oh, yes, that's right. Did any of you guys read Pete Schmigel's piece in the Sydney Morning Herald about his mother dying from COVID?
Yeah, that was heartbreaking.
No.
Awful.
Sorry?
I did.
You read it?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Very sad.
Well, you might be interested to know that he he actually did an interview with me last week, which is up on the current podcast. But he used to be he's the CEO of Recycling Australia, but he used to be the CEO of Lifeline, and so we had a good chat. But basically, do you mind? Can I read a little part of what he wrote?
Yeah, go.
Because he said, and I think he's one of our writers in residence as well at the moment. The piece, the long title, COVID-19 took my beloved mother, but in every way she is greater than this virus. He wrote, an additional tragedy of dying by COVID-19 is that one's death could define one's life. Following the death of my 87-year-old mother in New York's coronavirus outbreak, that thought really distresses me. That the sad results of a deadly virus might become more important than the positive consequences of my mother's and other victims' extraordinary lives. It should not be so. In my mother's case, the achievements were extraordinary. A survivor with her family of the shifting Eastern European fronts of World War II, a displaced person and political refugee from Western Ukraine to the United States. A trajectory from non-English speaking nanny to a master's degree in psychological social work, to long-term leadership of a major social services agency helping drug-affected families in the South Bronx. More than 50 years of marriage, working motherhood, and a much-lauded voluntary contribution to women's non-government organisations associated with the United Nations. A quaintly accented, always elegant, fiercely opinionated Democrat, feminist New Yorker, she was until recently riding the subway from our largely working-class neighbourhood in Queens, where she lived in the same building for 60 years, to Manhattan museums with her visiting Aussie-born hipster adult grandchildren. This remarkable woman spent her entire adult life fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Social justice was a term that caught up with Nadia's determined and activist practice of compassion for the disadvantaged. In every way, my mother was greater than the coronavirus that killed her, but for its pernicious and painful way of taking the last breath from her lungs. It's a sneaky and mean disease. Medical staff at the hospital, which is considered top-notch, believed that Nadia was coming out the other end and had moved her out of ICU to a recovery ward. The prognosis was optimistic, and we were told that things aren't as bad as you see on the news. The end was shockingly fast. Nadia's final deterioration took place over a matter of intense minutes, including a soul-wrenching last international phone call where the sound of the respirator made it nearly impossible for us to hear each other. I can only hope that somehow she heard my last I love you. It is hard to think of her loneliness and horror in those final minutes. In a strange hospital surrounded by strangers and struggling for each breath, I still don't know who was there at the bedside, and that feels somehow like an act of abandonment. It's hard to accept from the opposite side of the planet that I couldn't get on a plane to be a good son and offer some final comfort. There is much to be said for the religious and other rituals of death, and many, like my family, are paying an additional cost for our corona-related disconnection. We're now asked to find ways to grieve and mourn and avoid without touch and via Zoom. While the digital and virtual worlds are godlike in their technology and power as much as we are trying our best, it doesn't feel like we are honouring the deceased or that we're helping each other to heal. I confront the consequences of my own choice to live as a globalist now that globalism too has died. Our family is reflecting on the randomness of COVID-19. Nadia was fully isolated in an assisted living facility where significant precautions were being taken, including checking the temperatures of all staff 3 times a day. Thus far, and let's hope it stays this way, she is the only afflicted person from the facility. No staff members who presumably and unknowingly transmitted the disease from the outside are showing symptoms. The wicked fact of asymptomatic transmission, which appears to have happened in my mother's situation, is especially tough when trying to make some peace with a loved one's passing. Today, with my stalwart sister and reassuringly competent brother-in-law in a Midwestern city and also restricted in their travel, we grapple with logistics. Across time zones and emails and so many remaining questions of why and how, it is a strange and somewhat disassociating exercise. Organising the secure transfer of the body, talking to a funeral home about what specific protocols need to be followed, placing obituaries and asking local friends to find a suitable outfit in my mother's apartment. Perhaps she can wear one of the beautiful folkloric blouses she would embroider in her limited leisure time. It's more than surreal, planning a burial that none but a sole priest is likely to be at. But I'm fortunate for a loving wife and adult children. My daughter, who shared an apartment for a time and a love of flowers with her grandmother. My son, now training to be a nurse in Western Sydney, and his girlfriend, who together once prolonged a stay in New York to restore Nadia to health after a fall and a hip replacement. Yesterday, my son rode his bike out to Kurnell and photographed rock pools by the sea at dusk. When I saw them on my phone, I recalled him at around age 5, proudly taking his American grandmother by the hand and setting out to explore an Aussie beach. when life was real, when it was connected by texture, beauty, and love, not optic fibre, when life mattered more than the manner of a death. So that was his piece. And so if you want to go and have a listen at some point to the podcast, it's a really interesting conversation I had with him, because he was basically, when I contacted him, I said, Michael said to me, he's written this piece, would you be happy to see if he wants to have a chat? And when I contacted him, it was, I don't know, a week or so since his mum had died. And I emailed him and said, are you happy to talk about it? Or if it's too soon, I understand. And he said, no, this is what writers do. He said, when we in times of grief, we write, and when in times of joy, we write, and it's just what we do. So let's talk about writing. So I called him up and yeah, go and have a listen. It's a really fascinating insight into this idea of, he makes the point that we all know that we're going to die, and we all know that, that our aging parents at some point will die. He said, but 5 years ago, if we'd all sat down and said, as a family, had a chat as if you would about what's going to take mum out, a global pandemic isn't the thing that you would think. No. But we sort of drifted from that onto mental health stuff and so forth because of his history as the CEO of Lifeline. And I'll let you have a listen to that. But he told me a really horrifying statistic. He said that in New South Wales, in country west of the Blue Mountains, in country New South Wales, there are 3 full-time psychiatrists.
Wow, that's terrible.
Wow.
And when you consider that, but he was talking about suicide, and he said, suicide isn't something we don't really quite understand yet. He said the fact that it comes down to usually it comes down to a window of about 15 minutes where people go through a thought process that is very different from what they would normally go through, and that's when that decision is made. He said, so that kind of makes this whole idea of only having 3 psychiatrists in Western New South Wales even more,
But the trouble is, if you, let's say those 3 psychiatrists, they will have like booked up schedules for so long in advance. So the 15 minutes is the 15 minutes you have to decide or not to decide to call Lifeline or another helpline. So I did that in about 1990. I did the Lifeline training in the town that I lived in, and for 2.5 years I did, I think, a shift a fortnight because I was working full time. So that's how they did it, just people did few hours a fortnight. Maybe it was 4 hours once a fortnight. And the very first person who rang was ringing at that moment.
Wow.
God, the guy who trained us, because we had to do, I think it was 6 months, pretty robust training every long week, every week. And then there were a couple of weekends away and, and luckily he was still in the office. So he was like coaching me from behind. But this guy rang up and said, I'm going to kill myself. And then, like, if you're the poor bunny who doesn't know anything on the other end, just the volunteer, it's really extraordinary that experience. So the more it unravelled, what happened was he had been sexually abusing his stepchild, daughter, who had told her mother, and that's why he was going to kill himself. So you're like, yeah, on the one hand, you've got to fight the impulse to say, I so despise what you've done. So very sorry, I've just gone off on a tangent, James, but
that's all right.
It's so, it's so shocking. And if there's a 15-minute window, what is it that turns somebody around? It's not, can I get an appointment with the psychiatrist?
In 3 weeks' time or 6 months' time,
yeah.
or whatever it would be.
Yeah, it's like some random contact with a person, maybe a stranger, maybe a kind friend or a neighbour, or I don't know what.
Without going into too much detail, personal detail, but in our family we had a couple of circumstances where we had to get an appointment for someone very quickly, and drive to Lane Cove on a Saturday morning after ringing the day before, and you feel so desperate that you feel so incredibly grateful that somebody actually has that space for you. You know, you almost want to hug them and go, "Thank you for making a space in your books." And you go, "Well, that's cool, that's what we do." But yeah, it's so to be told that moment of desperation that, give us a call in 6 weeks and we'll see if we, because you usually get the woman on the counter at the front who I used to work in health, and I can promise you that the consultants' secretaries are trained in being unpleasant. They are. Well,
I've always found that particularly if they're married to the doctor, like maybe, the nicer the doctor, the meaner the secretary. It's like they have to defend the nice doctor.
Yep.
It's really interesting. I've noticed that.
Yeah.
I think I might have to go because I've got a Zoom limit of 1 hour.
Yeah, I have to go too. I'm sorry, but it was lovely to see everybody.
Oh, it's good to see you, Kath.
Yeah, I must talk to you on the phone soon.
Yes,
all right, thanks for
Okay,
hanging.
see you later. Bye.
Bye.
It looks like we lost the guest anyway.
We didn't get our guest.
We didn't get our guest again. Oh.
Lucky we can entertain ourselves.
Maybe they'll tune in at 8. It's 2 minutes to 8.
I did email her.
Nice to see you. It's seeing people when you're stuck at home is so nice.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, see you, Suzanne.
Bye, Sue.
Well, that was fun. But a shame we didn't get Fiona right.
It is a shame. Yeah, it'd be nice if I'll email her tomorrow and say, "What the heck? What's going on?"
And
so, Fiona, have you got anything else you can share with us, or
yeah, if you like.
We'd like that.
Would you like something more on the bird theme, or
you decide?
This is only.
Can you hear the music?
No. Oh, yes.
Now I can.
That's nice.
Because I just thought I'd have that playing just so it felt like we're in the cocktail bar at the Avalon.
Okay, this is a short poem. It does have birds in it.
Well, as long as it's got birds in it.
Birds and yoga. It's very short. It's called Grace. I haven't read this for a very long time, so this will be interesting. Once I fell asleep during yoga, folded into child pose. Waking up with pins and needles, I tried to stand, but legs collapsing, flopped to the floor. The chance angle of my head just right to sight a cluster of lorikeets flash past my window.
Yeah.
That's it.
Nice.
That's lovely.
I found a bird poem by Ogden Nash.
I'll go on. Here's good fun.
I've never read this, so who knows? It may be terrible. Bird watchers top my honours list. I aimed to be one, but I missed. Since I'm both myopic and astigmatic, my aim turned out to be erratic, and I bespectacled and binocular. This is about bird watching, yeah. And I bespectacled and binocular, exposed myself to comment jocular. We don't need too much bird lore, do we, to tell a flamingo from a tui? Yet I cannot and never will unless the silly bird stands still. And there's no enlightenment in a tour of ornithological literature. Is yon strange creature a common chickadee or a migrant alouette from Picardy? You can rush to consult your nature guide and inspect the gallery inside, but a bird in the open never looks like its picture in the birdie books. Or if it did once, it has changed its plumage and plunges you back into ignorant gloomage. That is why I sit here growing old by inches, watching a clock instead of finches, but I sometimes visualise in my gin that Audubon that I ought to been.
I like that. I like watching a clock instead of finches.
That's bad.
Yeah, because he of course was famous for the one about the Pelican too, wasn't he?
Yeah. Have you got that handy?
Is that the Pelican one?
Yeah, the wonderful bird is a pelican. His beak can hold more than his belly can. He can hold in his beak enough food for a week, but I'm damned if I see how the hell he can. I loved Ogden Nash. He had that wonderful one about the shortest poem called My Goldfish, and it's 2 lines, wet, pet.
That's terrible. That's not poem.
And there's also one he wrote about, oh yeah, here we go. Rattlesnake meat, a poem by Ogden Nash. A gourmet challenged me to eat a tiny bit of rattlesnake meat. Remarking, don't look so horror-stricken, you'll find it tastes a lot like chicken. It did. Now chicken I cannot eat because it tastes like rattlesnake meat.
Love it.
Silly. Well, I don't know that Fiona's going to join us.
No.
All right, folks. Well, should we call it a night, do you think?
Sure.
Well, we should. I can't find another animal poem for you.
Oh, there's plenty, but you're not trying hard enough, Michelle.
I'm not trying hard
Next
enough.
time.
I have to bring my books.
Michael, did you have anything you wanted to add before we shot through?
No, not particularly.
How's life for you at the moment?
Life for me is a mixture of juggling homeschooling, 8-year-olds who really don't want to actually homeschool. That life is far more exciting not doing anything to do with school, but finding things that are funny, mostly by goading and teasing sisters and parents. The juggling of the transition to a COVID world where every program and grant that you actually write needs to be reassessed. You have to apply for variation, so we keep WestWords going, working through the government regulations, rent relief, all that fun stuff, conversations with local government and government. So it's a mixture of having to respond immediately to the circumstances of the times and support everybody else as they're trying to do things like the Kitten Club or the interviews or the workshops, as well as just trying to stay sane in lockdown with children.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I just let everyone know that because we are transitioning stuff as much as we can, there is also a new WestWords YouTube channel. If you search WestWords Official, that's the name of the channel, WestWords Official. And there's some holiday workshops that we did with a couple of children's writers and illustrators, but there's also readings by various writers and interviews, and this is going to go up on there as well. So you didn't know that, did you? I did tell you at the beginning it was being recorded, so it's not a surprise. Is that okay with everyone?
We didn't have our guest, James. They'll all look at us and go,
that is disappointing. Anyway,
would you like me to change my last name on this?
Fiona, quick change.
That's up to you.
No.
Yeah, so jump on there and have a look, but certainly on the podcast, there's plenty of stuff on the podcast. We're trying to kind of get up there, and that that interview with Peter is worth listening to. He's a
great,
very wise man, and he's got an interesting website as well, so go and have a listen to that.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks very much.